All right, now we're on to lesson 8, our last lesson of trig, and we're going to be working on some questions where you're going to have to figure out, are you going to use sine, are you going to use cosine, or are you going to use tan? So here's the first question. It says, in the World Cup downhill held at Panorama Mountain Village in BC, the skiers raced 3,514 meters down the mountain, right? The number is right here. If the vertical height of the course was 984, again, there's that value right there, determine the average angle of the course. This is what we're looking for. Express your answer to the nearest tenth, so 1 decimal place. So the first thing I do is I label. My angle is here. My longest side is the hypotenuse. There's my opposite. And then I have my adjacent. So I'm going to use SOHCAHTOA. I don't know which one to use. So I take a look at it. The first thing that I see is the hypotenuse is 3,514. I need the hypotenuse. The opposite is 984. I need the opposite. The adjacent has no value. I don't need it. So I'm looking for the one that has O and H. The one that has O and H is sine, so I know that I'm going to be using sine. Sine theta equals O over H. And just like the last lesson, I plug in what I know. I don't know the angle. I know the opposite is 984. I know the hypotenuse is 3,514. Step number 1, because I'm trying to find an angle, I divide. So sine theta equals 0.2800. Now to find the angle, I need the inverse of sine. So I'm going to hit second, or I'm going to hit shift onto my calculator, whatever one you need on your calculator. And I get an angle that is roughly 16.3 degrees. So again, the work in this lesson is no different, besides you deciding which one you got to use, sine, cos, or tan. So here's our next example. A small boat is 95 meters. There we go. From a lighthouse. The height is 36 meters. So those are the two that I'm going to need. We want to figure out the angle, so I label it. That one's the opposite. This is the hypotenuse. This one is the adjacent. So I go to SOHCAHTOA. What do I need? I don't need the hypotenuse because there's no number there. But I do need the opposite and I do need the adjacent. So I need O and A. O and A are found here in TOA, which stands for tan. O on top, A on the bottom. So now I fill it in. I do not know the angle, but I know that the opposite is 36, and I know that the adjacent is 95. So because I'm trying to find an angle, my first step is to divide. Now to find the angle is when I'm doing that inverse of tan, I'm getting second or shift of 0.3789. And I get an answer, if I round, 20.8 degrees. It says to the nearest degree, so I would say I'd round that up to 21 degrees. Something that's useful is knowing what the angle of elevation and the angle of depression is. The angle of elevation is always the angle at which you're looking up at something, right? This is the angle of elevation, looking up. The angle of depression would be the angle at which you're looking down at something. We learned when we did the parallel lines that those two angles are actually going to be equal to each other. So if you know the angle of depression, quite often it's easier to just throw it as the angle of elevation. So here's our last example for this unit. Sam wants to calculate the height of the totem pole. Okay? He has his transit. His transit's right here in the picture. It is 19 meters away. So I'm just going to draw this picture because it's kind of hard to see. So he's 19 meters away from the totem pole. The totem pole is going that entire distance, but from here up. All right. The transit is 1.7 meters tall. So this distance right here is 1.7. It knows the angle of elevation is 63. So this angle right there is 63 degrees. It wants to know what is the height of the totem pole. So this is going to be a two-step question. The first thing I need to find, I'm going to call it x, is this distance right here. So I label my triangle according to my angle, which is 63. That's the hypotenuse. I don't know it. I don't need it. This is the opposite. And the 19 is the adjacent. So in SOHCAHTOA, the one that has O and A is TOA, so I'm going to be doing a tan. So now I fill in what I know. I do know theta, it is 63. My O is x, my A is 19. So now because I have tan of 63, I'm punching that in, tan of 63. Again, I write this to 4 decimals. And now I'm doing this like a cross multiplication. These two go together through multiplication, so I multiply them. 19 multiplied by my answer, so I get x is equal to 37.3 roughly. Now that is just this distance right here. I have to add on the 1.7. And so I get exactly 39 meters high, roughly. So now you have 2 things that you need to do. You need to finish off practice 8 for your trig, and then you also have a hand-in assignment that you'll work on before writing the test.